We start this hour with a new battle over abortion rights. This morning, the Biden administration is appealing a decision by a federal judge in Texas that would halt the use of a commonly used abortion pill.
That's right. Protests took place over the weekend in response to the judge's ruling. The drug in question has been approved by the FDA since 2000. The decision was followed by a separate ruling from a federal judge in Washington state that contradicts the Texas decision. This will likely lead to a lengthy legal battle, ultimately decided by the Supreme Court. NBC News White House correspondent Ali Rafa has the latest.
Competing rulings by two federal judges over the availability of the most commonly used abortion drug, causing chaos and confusion across the country. The Biden administration vowing all options are on the table to ensure abortion access, as the cases likely head to the nation's highest court. Battle lines drawn.
I'm very worried about the women who need this medication.
We applaud the judge's action to issue the stay on the chemical abortion drug mifepristone.
After the most consequential abortion ruling since the reversal of Roe v. Wade, a Texas federal judge suspending FDA approval of the most commonly used abortion pill, giving the federal government 7 days to appeal before the ruling goes into effect.
We intend to do everything to make sure it's available to them, not just in a week, but moving forward, period.
Health and Human Services Secretary Javier Becerra vowing the Biden administration is considering all legal options.
Well, we've already filed an appeal of this court's ruling.
The issue will likely be decided by the Supreme Court after a federal judge in Washington state ruled to protect the drug in more than a dozen states. One Republican lawmaker threatening cuts to FDA funding if the White House fights the Texas ruling.
It may come a point where House Republicans on the appropriation side have to defund FDA programs that don't make sense.
Some healthcare providers are now stockpiling the pill, fearing an all-out ban, while some Democrats urge the Biden administration to go even further.
I believe that the Biden administration should ignore this ruling. It is up to the Biden administration to choose whether or not to enforce such a ruling.
HHS Secretary Becerra not committing to that specific option.
Every option is on the table.
Legal experts say the drug will likely remain available as these cases make their way through the courts, a process that could take months, possibly even years.
Okay, Ali, thanks so much. And for more on this, we're joined by NBC News legal analyst Danny Savalos. Danny, good morning. How unprecedented is it for a federal judge in Texas to make this decision, given that the FDA approved this more than 20 years ago?
District courts don't normally issue nationwide bans like this. They have to have a pretty good reason to do so. But the reasoning here is basically that the decision-making process, the FDA, was improper. And therefore, if it was improper, then the approval simply can't be effective nationwide. It wouldn't work. The thinking goes to disallow the FDA's approval in just this district. It is therefore nationwide, which is a rare thing.
And I mean, Danny, let's talk about the second ruling out of Washington state. It appears to contradict the Texas decision. So is this precedented? And if it ends up in the Supreme Court, what's the timeline there?
One of the things this tells you right away is that you're likely to see a good reason for appeal, not just to the Fifth Circuit, but to the United States Supreme Court. Because anytime you have what's called a circuit split, and this isn't exactly a circuit split, this is a district court, trial court level split, which might get remedied as soon as it gets appealed up to the appeals court. In other words, the Washington ruling may go up to an appeals court, and then that court, the Ninth Circuit, would decide, oh no, we're going to decide this consistently with the other court, and then we don't have a split. It's very confusing, but simply because this is a controversial topic, we can expect it to make its way to the Supreme Court. But as we know, existing precedent would lean towards this case, this particular opinion standing.
And Danny, as we heard in Ali's piece, the Biden administration has already appealed this. What are the legal options moving forward?
The best basis to appeal is to go up to the Fifth Circuit, which is the appellate court in this district, for this district, and argue that the plaintiffs don't have standing. And then the other argument, I guess you would say spiritually, is the idea that the idea behind Dobbs is that they would return the issue of abortion to the people. In other words, they wouldn't intervene through an agency or a court and say, this is what abortion law should or shouldn't be. And yet you have a single district justice making a decision, not democratically, but on his own, that affects abortion nationwide. Very interesting inconsistency there legally.
A lot to watch here.
Thanks for bringing it down, Danny. Thank you. And now to the mystery involving top secret military documents.
This morning, there are growing concerns over the security of the United States defense secrets after classified U.S. documents about Ukraine's war effort and military strength were possibly leaked. Photos of the allegedly top secret documents were recently posted on social media, but different versions of the documents have surfaced since they first appeared online in March, some citing a number of Russian military casualties in the war in Ukraine, a number significantly lower than the Pentagon's estimates. Fueling speculations, the documents were altered. To dig in, we're joined by NBC News global security reporter Dan DeLuce. Dan, good morning. So what can you tell us about these documents and exactly what they reveal?
You know, it's quite extraordinary what's appeared online. These are definitely not meant to be seen publicly. These are classified documents, and U.S. officials believe they are genuine, although that's still being verified. And it really does offer a glimpse into U.S. spying on Russia's war machine, and it gives a frank assessment of what the U.S. feels is the state of the war in Ukraine with Ukraine and Russia. Most of the documents are focusing on the war there. There are photos, satellite imagery, charts, maps, a lot of detail about Ukraine's combat power and Ukraine's capabilities. So this is really something that has made officials very embarrassed and very concerned that this is leaked.
And Dan, these documents, I know, don't just shed light on the U.S. spying in the Ukraine war, but they also show the U.S. potentially gathering intelligence on our own allies, including South Korea and Israel. So what are the implications of that and those leaks for national security?
That's right. There are documents that cite intelligence about internal deliberations in South Korea, that they're nervous about giving artillery ammunition to the U.S. that might end up in the hands of the Ukraine military. Also intelligence on Israel and alleged internal dissension about the anti-government protests there. But more broadly, this is potentially the biggest security breach of intelligence since 2013, when Edward Snowden, as we all remember, disclosed thousands of documents about electronic spying. This is a smaller scale. This is dozens of documents, but it's nevertheless potentially damaging. The Justice Department is investigating exactly how this happened and who may be behind it.
And Dan, as we mentioned, although U.S. officials believe the documents are most likely authentic, at least one of those obtained by us, NBC News, appears to be doctored. What can you tell us about that?
That's right. That's all part of the investigation. So one of these documents that was posted has two different versions. One version has a low number for Russian casualties. And as we all know, the Pentagon and independent analysts, and there are many anecdotal examples of this, the Russians have been suffering major casualties, very large number of troops killed and wounded. And so this raised questions why the same document appears with two different figures. There haven't been really other examples of that, but that has raised questions about, who is behind this, who would have altered that document.
And Dan, briefly here, how exactly did the documents end up on social media, obviously spreading pretty widely?
That's right. Well, the first these documents appeared, according to Bellingcat, that investigative Dutch group, is that they first appeared on Discord, which is a platform devoted to the game Minecraft, believe it or not. And then it spread across other social media platforms, Telegram, and then Twitter. But we don't know who is behind this or how this happened. It could be a leak. It could be a hack. Was Russian spying agents, were Russian spying agencies behind this? These are all questions that the Justice Department and the Pentagon are trying to answer right now. But in the meantime, there are many dozens of documents now out there publicly that look like joint staff briefings for the U.S. military leadership that were never meant to be posted publicly. So this is causing a lot of consternation.
Understandably, a lot to dig into here. Dan DeLuce, thank you so much. And turning now to the latest on the two Democratic Tennessee state lawmakers who were expelled from their positions just last week. The expulsion came after the men led a protest on the state's House floor regarding new gun laws following the mass shooting at a Nashville elementary school. Today might be a pivotal day for at least one of the former state representatives who could be in the running to get his seat back. NBC News correspondent Kathy Park explains.
2 Tennessee lawmakers fighting to take back their seat.
That the people will hold them accountable both at the county level and in the special election.
They are afraid of the changes that are happening in our society and the voices that are being elevated.
No action! The GOP-controlled State House expelled Democratic Representatives Justin Jones and Justin Pearson for breaking the rules as they rallied for tougher gun control measures. It's now up to local leaders in their districts to pick their replacements until a special election that is yet to be announced. The Metro Nashville Council will weigh in, and so far at least 23 members vowed to reappoint Representative Jones. Representative Pearson's fate lies with the Shelby County Board of Commissioners. On Easter Sunday, he addressed his former constituents at church.
The supermajority Republican legislature decided that it was time for us to go because it was, in our opinion, time to listen.
These men, along with Gloria Johnson, make up the Tennessee Three. The trio thrust into the national spotlight for speaking out after the mass shooting at the Covenant School in Nashville. Johnson was also up for expulsion, but survived the vote.
It might have to do with the color of our skin.
Our members literally didn't look at the ethnicity of the members that were up for expulsion.
Emotions running high, likely stretching through the week and beyond. Kathy Park, NBC News.
Escalating violence in the Middle East this weekend as Israel fired rockets into Syria following an attack from that country. Now the U.S. Navy is deploying a nuclear submarine to the region. It all comes after weeks of massive protests over proposed changes to Israel's judicial system. Daniel Shapiro is director of the N7 initiative at the Atlantic Council's Middle East programs and served as the United States ambassador to Israel from 2011 to 2017. He joins us now with more. Good morning, Ambassador Shapiro. Thank you for joining us. And what does the U.S. sending that nuclear submarine to the region tell us about this current situation?
There's an ongoing shadow war between Israel and Iran. Iran, through its proxies and terrorist organizations that it sponsors in Lebanon, in Syria, Palestinian organizations in Gaza, attacks Israel on a regular basis with rockets and drones and other means. It has also attacked in the past Israeli ships transiting in the Persian Gulf region. And the United States is the main security guarantor of that region. The Fifth Fleet, based in the Persian Gulf, in the Arab Gulf, is the military command of the United States that ensures the freedom of shipping lanes. And when Iran has more or less openly threatened to retaliate for Israeli strikes that are retaliating for Iranian proxy strikes on Israel against Israeli ships transiting that region, it's very appropriate for the United States to make sure that it has the assets in place to deter Iranian aggression, both against shipping, but also more broadly. Iran is approaching the capability to build a nuclear weapon, and it's very important that there be a broader U.S. military deterrence strategy to ensure that Iran does not cross that threshold.
Okay, and in a recent interview, former military intelligence chief Major General Tamir Heyman said he's worried that the government's plan to overhaul the judiciary may have caused irreversible damage to relations with the United States. Do you think he's right?
Well, General Heyman has expressed a view that many former senior military and intelligence officials in Israel have expressed, that this very hasty and very drastic suggested overhaul of the Israeli judiciary system is doing two things. One, it is causing a very serious breach of social cohesion within Israel, and that's exemplified by a significant number of Israeli reservists, including Air Force pilots, saying they cannot serve if they are serving a non-democratic regime. What they are worried about is that this overhaul would produce a concentration of all authority in one branch of government, essentially putting the judiciary at a much lower position compared to the executive and the legislative branches, which are really fused in Israel. But the other threat that General Heyman and others have identified is that Israel's enemies, Iran, Hezbollah, various other proxies of Iran around the region, see the divisions within Israel and view that as an opportune time to strike. And of course, we've seen numerous attacks against Israel from numerous fronts over recent weeks. I think that's a misread by those enemies, that they think Israel will not unify to respond respond against it. But he articulated the same thing that the defense minister, Yoav Gallant, articulated about 3 weeks ago, which led the prime minister to fire him, and then, of course, seems to have reversed the decision to fire him. But that was what produced a dramatic and spontaneous protest against the government, because it appeared that the prime minister was putting his judicial overhaul legislation at a higher priority than Israel's national security, which has always been the most important issue for Israelis.
Okay, such important insight. Ambassador Shapiro, thank you so much.
Now let's get a check on your morning news now weather forecast.
Meteorologist Michelle Grossman joins us now with more. Good morning, Michelle.
Good morning to you both. Great to see you. And here's the good news. We're starting out very quiet this week. We haven't been able to say that in weeks. We're looking at a few problem spots, but not like what we've seen the past 2 weeks. Let's start with some wet weather across the area. We're starting the wet in the west. We are wet in the northwest, especially in Washington, also Oregon. We're going to see a stream of steady moisture. It's an onshore flow along with a front that's going to bring some lower elevation rain and some higher elevation snow. Where you see the blue, that's the snow. The pink is a mixed precipitation, and then you see the yellows and the reds, the oranges. That is the heavier rain falling. It's also going to be really windy, winds gusting up to 50 miles per hour. Then as we go throughout tomorrow, it's going to move further inland. So now we're going to see the snow stretching east into the northern Rockies. This is going to stay in place over the next several days. So it's not just today, it's Tuesday and also Wednesday with this front kind of impacting the area. And we're talking about a bit of rain in some spots where you see the orange and yellow. That's where we're seeing the heaviest amount. So could see locally up to 4 inches of rain in some spots. In addition to that, we're going to really warm it up. I'll show you temperatures in just a bit. So we're going to see the snow melting. This is going to become a big story over the next several months. All that snow that fell for months, record snowfall, will start to melt. And we're going to see excessive rainfall and rapid snow melt. Look at these temperatures, though. 97 today in Tucson. That's 15 degrees above normal for this time of year. Near 90 on Las Vegas. We're seeing these temperatures warm into the Ohio Valley, into the Northeast. 71 in Minneapolis, upper 70s in Omaha. That's going to stay in place tomorrow. Notice all these red colors. That's indicating that warm air in place, that southerly flow in place. So we're looking at 77 in Chicago, 19 degrees above normal, 79 in Sioux Falls. And we're also looking at rain in portions of Florida. We have a very weak front. It's draped across the area. You see that flow here, bringing just that wet weather throughout the day. That's going to be the case for today and also for tomorrow. Now, I do want to mention this. We're looking at a severe weather, the chance for strong storms, even severe in some spots in portions of the central and southern plains today. And that's also due to a frontal boundary. But guys, not bad. We just have a few sort of disturbances that will bring some unsettled weather, but not like what we've seen.
I will take not bad after all the storms that this country has been weathering.
It's time.
Michelle Grossman, thank you so much.
Sure.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.